I bet Chick-Fil-A could make a good bourbon. It'd be efficient.
No, they can make a good pick of bourbon line.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Maybe Total Wine could take some lessons from Chick-fil-A on how to run a raffle, too.
Hello and welcome everyone to episode 8 of The Mashup, the best bourbon conversation you're going to hear all week long. We're your hosts, Michael, Anthony, and Steven. Hey fellas.
What's up, guys?
Hey guys, what's going on?
Just sitting in my spot, my usual spot.
It's a fun night. It's going to be our first flight night, and before we get into that, I just wanted to bring up a topic that is very near to my heart, which is budget bourbon. I know personally, over the years, as I've tasted different bourbons and thought about chasing the ones that are hard to find and others, there's some that just sort of provide the comfort of knowing that I can go to the store and pick them up and they're going to deliver something good for me and not break the bank. Because without telling you guys what our flight is yet, I wanted to mention that a couple of my favorite budget bourbons are actually Very Old Barton and JTS Brown. How about you guys? What are you thinking about your favorite budget bourbon?
I would say I like the Ancient Age from Buffalo Trace. It's a 90 proof. Unfortunately, it's not sold in Kentucky. You can always pick up a liter in Ohio for about $15, which isn't too bad. And then also I'd say the Old Fitz Prime. It's like $9 or $10. It's a good bottom shelfer. It's only 80 proof. It's not going to knock you off your feet, but it's always a pretty solid one.
For me, I would say one that came to mind was the Evan Williams White Label. It's the bottled and bond. It's the 100 proof. You normally can pick it up $14, $15 and probably find it everywhere.
That's interesting that you mentioned, and it's funny that all three of us mentioned that one of our choices for our budget bourbons, where each one of us had Heaven Hill in our choices for budget bourbon, which makes that really interesting. I got to go back to Michael for a second, though. You said Ancient Age. Is that kind of the bourbon head way of saying it? Because I kind of know it as 10 star, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, right. Star? Yeah, I guess I'm just reading the label. Did I say enough ancients in there? I don't know if I did or not. Did I say 2 or 3?
I think we can go 4. 4A is good.
Yeah, but it's the Ancient Age. Yeah, the 10 star used to be the 10 year a long time ago. Now it's just 10 star, and I believe it even says now on the neck that it's only aged like 36 months. People will tell you it's the poor man's Blanton's, and I can see that in there. It's pretty solid, I think. Anything that comes in a handle that's plastic is aces in my book, too.
No, I think that's a really good one. I actually think the first time I introduced my brother to Ancient Age 10 star, the first thing he said to me was, "This tastes a lot like Blanton's." So there's something to that, because he's
there you go,
experienced bourbon drinker, and for him to say that must mean that they're doing something right.
Well, like you said, this is our first flight. Very excited on the chosen flight for this evening. We have 3 bottles, 3 pours tonight. The first bottle is the Heaven Hill Green Label. The second bottle is the Heaven Hill White Label. And the third bottle is the Heaven Hill, I guess now you call it the Heaven Hill 7 year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when we were thinking about what we want to do as a flight, those that are listening out there got to understand something. When people think that, yeah, you're in Kentucky, you can get all the bourbon, sometimes it's really not about the high-end bourbon that we can get. So Heaven Hill, for the longest time, had blessed the state with making a lot of Kentucky-only bourbons that we've seen disappear in the last couple of years. And 2 of those products, actually only one that we know of for sure that has disappeared, is the 6-year White Label bottled and bond house brand of Heaven Hill. And we're also going to be talking about it, as Steven said, the Green Label, which is the 90 proof version. It's not bottled and bond. And then, of course, the one that's available, and now the 7-year that's available, is not even available in Kentucky. And so Heaven Hill went and did this whole thing on us where we had these great house brand, pretty much, as you'll find out here in a moment, budget-based brands, and then they turned around and pulled the rug out from under us and then said, here's the 7-year version that we're going to go with, and it's not even available in Kentucky. So pretty interesting. I just wanted to make sure that I gave that quick overview. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts about that until we get into the specs of every bottle here.
Yeah, it's just kind of ironic that you got the 2 that we could only get in Kentucky, and then they're doing away with those, and then the only one left is the one that we can't get in Kentucky. You had people traveling across the border to get to Kentucky to buy these other ones up, and then we're leaving the state to buy the third one we're trying. So,
yeah, we may have bought a case of it in Florida.
Nice. I didn't know it was that much. Let's get right into it, guys. Let's talk about this first bottle. So the first bottle that we're going to be tasting tonight is the Heaven Hill Green Label. The bottle that we're tasting from tonight is a 2019 laser code, but of course this is distilled by Heaven Hill. It's got an AVB of 45%, or it's 90 proof. It's aged 6 years. It's not bottled in bond. The mash bill on all these ones that we're talking about, I'll just say it one time, is 78% corn, so it's high corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley. And then here's the kicker. This bottle, when we all first started buying it, and even now toward the end, and it's really up in the air of whether or not it's discontinued. A lot of people are saying it's not, but none of us are seeing it on shelves here in the area. But the MSRP was $9 on this thing when a lot of us started buying it, and I know the last bottle I bought was around $12. So pretty much falls in that category of a budget bourbon.
oh man, that inflation's really going to get you on that one.
What do you guys think?
Well, isn't there like a green label Heaven Hill that's not a 6-year? I think they sell like in other states. I think
they were doing that, and of course, the next. Well, I'll mention it sort of in the context of that. The next bottle that we're going to be tasting of the second one of the three is the white label Heaven Hill, and that is a 6-year-old bottled and bond bourbon that has been discontinued. Carries the same mash bill. The only difference is that it's 6 years old and it has a proof of 100 or 50% ABV, and that's was a $12 to $18 bottle when it was available. But the reason why Couch sat and talking about what you just said about there being a green label version available in other states, Heaven Hill now has a new white label that's available on shelves. It's non-age stated, and it carries a price tag of I think like $10.
Yeah, I think it's less than 10.
Tasted it,
yeah.
But the one we're tasting tonight is a 6 years. So it wouldn't surprise me if they had a green label in other states that wasn't age stated, because they also had a black and gold label versions of Heaven Hill that were available in Kentucky that I've never had those either. So there's a lot of crazy stuff. But to sort of round this out before we get to tasting, the last bottle that we're going for is the one that we mentioned is not available in Kentucky, which is the 7-year-old bottled and bond, which effectively replaced the 6-year-old bottled and bond. And so the 7-year-old we saw appear in 2019, right as they were discontinuing the 6-year-old. That carries the same ABV and proof as the 6-year-old version, so it's a 100 proof and the same mash bill. The only difference, and here's the big kicker, guys, the price tag. So the 7-year-old Heaven Hill price tag for bottled and bond went to $40, and so we're looking at two other bottles that were widely available for anywhere from $10 to $18 and being replaced by a 7-year-old version, now priced out at $40 and not available in Kentucky.
It's interesting, just looking at the three bottles sitting here, they definitely upgraded their bottle style with the third and the most expensive one. It's definitely a heavier bottle. It's got a cork on it now versus the screw top that the other ones kind of were like just a whiskey style bottle. They added a little neck label that's about 15 pages long, and I don't really understand. I'm not getting into reading a book tonight. And then they got a little. I like the label on the new one. It's got it says family owned since 1935, and it's got this quaint little distillery on here with a little warehouse and a little and a little shop and all that kind of stuff. But anybody that's ever been to Heaven Hill knows it's just a factory. I mean, it is a huge operation, and so when you're looking at this picture, if that's what you're looking for when you're going to Heaven Hill, you're not going to find that.
Of course, the storied history of Heaven Hill, they had a massive fire there in the 90s that burned up a lot of their warehouses and a lot of their stock. I think it was in the 90s. Was it in the 90s when they had that fire? Do you guys remember?
I think so. I've heard about it. That was before I got into all this, so I don't really know.
Yeah, me too. I just know that if you watch old video of it, it's kind of a sight to see, though, with everything on fire in the hills and stuff. It was a big loss for bourbon. And, of course, the big enthusiasts always refer to the pre-fire and that Heaven Hill as being a very sought-after kind of stuff. So, but, yeah, it's a massive factory. They have, I mean, they're going to be one of the top three in terms of how much bourbon they're producing and warehousing in the entire state. So and probably in bourbon generally.
The best way for us to do this is probably nose all of them at first, and then we'll go through and we'll taste them one by one and see what our thoughts are on them. We'll go ahead and nose the first one, which is the green label.
It's very sweet.
Yeah, very sweet.
I'm getting nothing but like, if I could just say, like almost like a sugary sort of smell.
And you all know my thoughts on sweet after last episode.
Big fan.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the sweet things. Not so much.
Not really getting a whole lot of oak. Not really getting a lot of alcohol either, so that's not a bad thing. We'll say maybe a little bit of vanilla.
Yeah, the vanilla and caramel are definitely predominant. That sweetness, I'm trying to put my finger on what exactly I'm smelling.
Is it almost like, is it brown sugar? I don't know, because it almost like goes from like a sweet almost to like...
Is it butterscotch you're picking up on?
It might be. I mean, butterscotch flavor and like a sugary brown sugar would make sense to me, so...
It's very pleasant. It's a very pleasant nose.
There's nothing wrong with it at all. It smells great.
All right, we'll move on to the white label, the second one. Huge difference in character.
Oh yeah, it's got a... I know darker isn't a smell, isn't a note, but it smells darker.
It smells heavier.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if it's a little bit more oak. You know, it's the same age, of course, not being bottled and bond. The green label is not being bottled and bond, so there's a little less consistency with the green than there would be with the white.
I feel like it's more muted than the first one. I think I'm getting a little bit of that wet wood you talked.
Yeah, I was talking about wet wood when we were talking about that flavor, but I'm still getting the sugary notes, but I almost feel like there's a little bit of maybe... I'm keen to this because, I don't know, I love tasting like Stag Junior and stuff like that. This does not have Stag Junior nose, but it has like a little bit of tobacco, which I often pick up in Stag and Stag Juniors. A little bit faint though, not like super.
I'm getting tobacco out of it now. Let's move on to the third one, which is the 7-year.
Ooh. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if it's just too much, have my nose too far into glass, but I caught more alcohol on the...
I get a Sharpie, which is probably alcohol.
As we move down the line, smelling the notes, it's like we're getting less and less as it's aged, or as the proof went up.
I wonder how much of that's blending, too. I wonder if it has to do with how many barrels are in the batch. I can't imagine. They don't say small batch, so knowing Heaven Hill, there are probably thousands of barrels in each of these. Does it make sense to you guys? Like, I almost feel like the 7-year almost tries to like bring it all together, like it's a little bit more refined. So the green was a little bit too much sweetness. The 6 had a couple different things, and I feel like this one might be like a little bit of nut smell in there too.
It's gonna sound ridiculous, but I'm getting a faint grape soda. It's something about the lightness of the note that reminds me of a soda smell out of the carbonation. But then I'm getting some sort of fruit on the back end, and maybe I'm just putting it to grape.
I could see where you're coming from. I don't get that specifically. But then again, like with this line, I mean, I'm not getting a lot of citrus or fruit at all. Like with any of these, I'm getting more of like the classic bourbon flavors almost mixed with a little bit of, I don't want to call it peanuts because I've said that before, but that's kind of what I feel like I taste a little bit for some reason, like a peanut brittle type of flavor. So we'll see when we taste what we get, but...
Well, we shouldn't have to go past the first one because the bottle says bourbon at its finest.
Oh, yeah?
On the green label, yeah. So I don't understand why they didn't just stop right there. Evidently, they can't do any better. They just quit making it.
Why make the other ones? So out of the notes, fellas, which one do you prefer the notes of? 1, 2, or 3?
I like 1.
I'm going to agree. I like the green label as well, the notes from it. It just has more to it than the other ones.
Yeah, I'm between the green and the white label. The one I like the least actually right now is the 7-year, for the nose anyway.
I agree with you. Well, guys, let's go ahead and try the green label.
It's very smooth.
Yeah. You don't get any astringency, like bite, and you'd expect that for something that's a budget bottle that one time was costing $9.
It's nice. I would say there's probably a medium finish on it.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was longer than most.
It's subtle. It's not like a real harsh finish. It's just kind of there. I guess you would say it's mellow and smooth.
I would say that's accurate.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not getting like... The one thing I will say, and I don't know if you guys agree, is as sweet as it smells, it's not necessarily drinking super sweet to me.
Right. Nose is not coming through on the palate, is it?
Yeah, I don't think so at all. It just kind of...
I mean, these guys throw the gimmicks out on the bottles, though, don't they? Never a compromise in quality. Consistently good to the last drop. Made by the same time-proven method.
Is this Maxwell House?
I mean, that's what it sounds like. Bourbon at its finest, every drop. is charcoal filtered, mellow, and smooth. I mean, they've got all the slogans on theirs. Well, half of it's written in cursive, and I don't think anybody can read it's cursive anymore.
Well, the back says old style bourbon.
Oh, that's old style.
And it's written in old style lettering.
You know it's old.
The 7-year doesn't say old style, even though it's the oldest.
Well, guys, let's move on to number 2, the white label.
Well, it's got much more of a burn, I think.
Yeah.
It's harsh.
Especially on the front end.
Yeah.
Versus the green label didn't have anything on the front end.
You know that you're drinking some bourbon with that one. I mean, the 90 proof almost kind of goes down. The green label goes down like nothing. This has, wow, a much longer finish if there were one for.
Yeah,
this.
It's definitely a bigger hug. It's still going.
Really? Mine's kind of gone away.
Yeah, that's a long finish.
I feel like all the flavors are enhanced with this one. I think with the green, we still got the classic caramel, vanilla, oak kind of flavors. We talked about the little bit of tobacco, but I don't know if I tasted that. This one, I definitely taste more. Not a lot more, but a little bit.
There weren't many notes to pick up on. I don't know if I'm really getting much of that in the palate as well.
It's like you're drinking something just to drink it.
I feel like I'm just drinking like a very generic bourbon with not much there.
Yeah, there's nothing that stands out about it. It's just kind of serviceable and not in a bad way, because I will say when we started off our conversation and I talked about budget drinkers, I think it was a couple of episodes ago when I was talking about trends and said some guy on a Facebook group said, there's a lot of good bourbon out there, just get used to drinking Jim Beam White Label. And I was like, okay, yeah, you don't have to settle for that. And I meant that. This is kind of in that similar vein to me where, yeah, everybody knows somebody that might like Jim Beam White Label because they could drink it on the rocks or drink it in Coke or whatever. But hopefully you're not out there pouring yourself Jim Beam White Label neat every night and drinking it, because I think that would be very disappointing.
I'd say it is what it is. $12 to $18.
It's not knocking my socks off,
Cheap,
but it's a nice proof for the money. It's definitely drinkable.
I can see why people wanted it when it was available, but I wouldn't go seeking it out now. I wouldn't be paying a secondary price for it.
Yeah.
Okay, right now, if the green and white were sitting on the shelves, which would you grab at this point in the flight?
I'd grab the green.
You grab the green. I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I'm wishing I'd grab those more often.
Yeah.
I would also be grabbing the green. Funny and true story is that when I first started to get into bourbon, of course, coinciding when I first came to Kentucky, I had grabbed the green and the white for a little get-together that I was having, and one of the people that came to get together was a Kentucky born and raised person, and she came to the house, saw all the good bourbon, and saw the Heaven Hill and said, "Oh." I said, "What?" She's like, "I can't believe that you have Heaven Hell at your house." And I said, "What?"
Would she bring pot swill?
She was referring to these two bottles that we just tasted, the green and the white, as Heaven Hell. And she said, this was the cheap stuff that we drank when I was in college. And I was like, dang. Meanwhile, I was over at Whole Foods early in the day, and they're like, this is a great budget bourbon to have. And then the Kentuckian born and raised here is telling me this is called Heaven Hell. So I was like, dang.
It's possible that two things can be true. Something is cheap and something is good. You don't have to. Just because you're not paying a lot doesn't mean that you're settling. That's the way McDonald's operates. That's the way a lot of places are successful. So
it's the way Coors Light operates.
Absolutely. No one has ever been upset that they drank a Coors Light.
No.
But no one ever says, "Boy, I really like a Coors Light," though.
But when you get the Rockies cold,
however, if you're paying $9 or $10 for it, then you start getting a little upset. But
yeah. Speaking of paying triple what it's worth, let's go ahead and move on to the 7-year.
Hang on, let me read chapter 1 of this label here.
Right off the bat, that extra year mellowed out that white label a lot.
Yeah, that harshness. Yeah, there's not a burn.
I agree.
However, I didn't pick it up on nosing it, but on the palate, I'm picking up smoke.
Yeah, it is more smoky, but I do think that you taste. And is it possible to say that it's a little bit more smoky flavored, but it almost tastes more refined than the first two that we tasted? Refined in what way? I'm not picking out notes that stand out to me. Like, I just feel like I'm tasting I don't know how to pay a compliment here because I don't need to, but it almost tastes like a complete bourbon, but not in a standout way.
Well, it's got the mellow finish of the green label of the 90 proofer, I believe.
I'd agree with that.
Took out the kind of the harshness of the white label. For me, you're compromising having smoke in there, which I'm not a big fan of the smoke.
I don't know why that's the case. Did they add smoke flavor?
Did we pick up more wet wood from it? Is it just coming from the wet wood?
Maybe anytime I pick up like well, this is like not going to mesh here, but anytime I pick up a smoke, almost like I don't pick up the sawdust flavor. You always pick up like a sawdust flavor from really young bourbon. This doesn't taste like young bourbon, but it almost tastes like they mixed the green and the white together. That's what it tastes like to me, you know? It's almost like a little bit of both.
I don't know if the 7 has had more time to open up, but I'm getting more cherry or citrus a little bit out of it compared to when we initially smelt it. I wasn't picking up much of anything.
It might be dark fruit, if anything. That's kind of what I was thinking. But again, I don't know. It kind of all runs together for me.
I got a nice little antique taste there, and I mean antique as in an antique shop. You know, you kind of they got that smell.
That smell?
Yeah, it's like that wood and musty, probably smoke.
I know what you mean. Like I've been to antique shops where they have that. You walk in and you're like, there's like an old wood weird smell going on here.
Are you talking about the mothball smell?
Yeah. You're a big antiquer, aren't you?
Road tripping, baby.
Yeah, go in there and get you a nice little baby carriage or something. Hang on, guys. I'm only on page 4 of the label.
You know, since they took the white label off, aged it a year, and, you know, charged triple the price, I kind of want to do a head-to-head between 2 and 3, you know, to see which one maybe is better.
I will just say, as we're doing this, I'm going to have a hard time hiding my disdain for the fact that, you know, Heaven Hill has done so many wonderful things over the last couple of years, but taking away some things that were, you know, very near and dear to the Kentucky experience and then just replacing them with other things, I guess time will tell, but it just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, but they do a lot of good things too, though. I mean, they ain't stupid. They've hit the nail on the head with the Elijah Craig, Barrel Proof, the McKenna, the Old Fitz, the Canners.
Well, I agree, and I think that it's important that you just talked about McKenna because a lot of us could get McKenna for $25, $30, which is now a long time past thing. So I hope that as we do this comparison between the new $40 version of the 7-year versus the 6-year budget version, we think about those kind of things because that's important to the consumer, right? You know, would I rather have 10-year McKenna if I can get it for $40, which in some places in Kentucky you still can, or would I rather have the new 7-year? And I'm not really sure, even if tasting next to each other, how I'd feel about that.
Well, what about, Stephen, since you said that Evan Williams Bottled in Bond, the white label, is your budget bourbon.
Yep.
And you can't get the Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond 6 years old anymore, but they're made by the same people. Would that be a good substitution for not being able to get the 6-year-old white label anymore?
Yeah, they have different profiles, though, because the Evan Williams, I feel like when you drink it, your whole experience ends very quickly. You get your taste, there's a slight finish, and then I feel like it drops off into nothingness. Versus the white label here from Heaven Hill, where it was a pretty long finish. The Evan Williams, I think, is probably smoother than the white label, versus the white label over here with the Heaven Hill, which was a little harsh. So, yeah, I think the Evan Williams might be a good substitute. Or not even a substitute. Maybe, do I say a better one? Because of the harshness is gone. It's just on the back end. It just drops off to like nothing.
Did you guys see that they did actually increase the price of the Evan Williams white label and they changed the actual label?
They changed the label, right?
Yeah, they it's a little...
It's got like an arch to it.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't change much, but...
Yeah.
Got a little more green in it.
Whatever they did, even though it's in the same shape of a bottle as all these are, which, again, looks like a lot of other bottles, they increased the price. They did a little bit, slightly, just like they're doing with a lot of stuff.
Just like anything, right? You know when you go to a restaurant and they got a new menu, you know what that means. Prices are going to go up, too. Anytime they change anything, that's the opportunity. Speaking of, by the way, my wife and I were having this conversation tonight, and you guys know this because you all have little kids. But Chick-Fil-A is doing away with the 4-count kids meal and the 6-count kids meal, where you can choose either one, and they're going to do only a 5-count now. I told my wife, I bet you, though, the price isn't going to be somewhere in between the 4.
It's going to be a 6-count.
It's going to be the 6-count price.
Oh, yeah.
I bet Chick-fil-A could make a good bourbon. It'd be efficient.
No, they can make a good pick of bourbon line.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. They can.
Wait a minute. What do
Maybe
you mean
Total
they-
Wine could take some lessons from Chick-fil-A on how to run a raffle too.
I was gonna say, like, if Chick-fil-A was running the bourbon raffles, then you wouldn't have to like call a number for 10 minutes and not get through. And then
No, you just check in online, say you're here, and then they would they'd let you know.
How do we feel about the post-pandemic lottery setup where you enter the lotteries electronically and then you wait for the sad email that you didn't get anything? Do we like these or not?
I mean, it's convenient,
It is convenient.
but I also signed up for it 5 months ago, and
I mean, do you feel like if you really wanted something, you can get your butt up and get out? Well, I guess if they're all going lottery, then this is fine.
I noticed Total Wine apparently coordinated this with Total Wines around the country, I think, because I was noticing in my couple other groups that are not Kentucky based, they were having a Total Wine online lottery as well. But they were actually pretty upset because theirs told them they have to wait another month because they haven't gotten their bottles in yet. And apparently they signed up like in October like we did too. So they've waited 4 months and they haven't heard anything, and then they were told they got to wait another month. I would say it's, I don't like it, but because now anybody can pretty much sign up for it.
Yeah.
It's open to anybody. I do like Four Roses, I believe it was, did one, and it was only open to people in Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee, and I think maybe Ohio, which was, a little more reasonable because, right now, Total Wine can sign up, anybody can sign up for the Total Wine one in Kentucky, and, you could live in Colorado, and if you win a bottle of Pappy 23, I'm driving from Colorado here to get it for retail, whereas the Saturday morning ones, it was kind of just the people that lived here.
I might feel a little bit different if I actually was in the business, but I feel like most of what the distilleries have done and the retailers have done since the pandemic has started is uninspired crap. And what I mean by that is I just feel like I don't know that I could do it better, but I just feel like there's not a lot of thoughtfulness in the system. They're just kind of like, oh yeah, enter your email address or try to call us 10,000 times, and if you get through, you do. If you don't, then whatever. I just don't feel like that experience, and again, this is sort of sentimental and like old school of me, makes anybody feel like they're taking care of any kind of customers.
Well,
they're just like, well, whoever gets it, gets it. And if that's the way it is, that's fine. But I know that, when there was 1,000 people standing outside of any kind of store for a raffle, you had a better chance.
Well, and here's another thing is,
people.
if I'm at that raffle in person, either win or I don't win, more likely to be browsing the store and picking up, I'll pick up wine for my wife or seltzers or, another bottle, whatever. Okay, I didn't win, but you know what? I'm in the store, so I'll just, while I'm here, I've been meaning to grab a bottle of Maker's Mark anyway, so I'll do that. Now I just find out online and I'm sitting at home. I'm not going up there,
You haven't made any effort. And if you went there, you feel like, well, I should
at
least
I'm
put
here,
something on there.
Right, I'm here. It's like I kind of feel that way about the drive-through pharmacies too. I don't really understand that. I'd rather the person walk in the store.
I hate those.
I know. I'd rather walk in.
It takes so long.
And, you walk in the store, you're liable to pick up a bag of M&Ms.
And you need you anyway.
Yeah. Walgreens around here, you might grab a green label 6-year-old Heaven Hill.
Well, getting back to this comparison here between the 6 and 7 year, I'm preferring the notes on the 6 year a lot more than the 7. I don't know which taste I'm preferring though.
I have a very cynical synopsis on all this, so I will withhold my judgment.
I think I like the green label the best, and I don't even really like it the first time I tried it a couple months ago.
It's kind of a toss-up between the white and the 7 year.
Well, my synopsis is this, and it pains me to do this because it's been a long time since I've tried all these I've never tried all these side by side, just to get the record straight here, but it's been a long time since I've always had Heaven Hill around because it was available. The green and the white, the 6-year green, the 6-year white. Now it's becoming unavailable. I've not tried the new stuff, I'll be honest. Would I choose it over the other budget bourbons that I like? And I don't know that I would. And so if you tell me that I'm going to have to pay $40 for a 7-year version that is considered to be at $40 in a premium category, I mean, I'm just going to kind of say, like, go fly a kite. Like, honestly, I would just do without all of them. And I know that's not what anybody probably wants to hear that likes this stuff, but I kind of go back to what Michael said. I think that if I had to choose between the three of these in terms of the price and the taste and everything else, I would probably just go with the green label and call it a day. And maybe that's why that one's going bye-bye now too. So I would love to hear what you gentlemen have to say.
Well, I'm with you on that, Anthony. I'll say at $40, and I know $40 isn't a lot to some people. To me, I don't like to spend a whole lot more than that for any kind of bourbon. At $40, I expect that's going to be the kind of bottle that I just drink occasionally, and it's going to last me a while, versus something that's $10 or $12 that I'll drink a little bit more often, and I'll go through higher volumes of. And at $40, I expect a whole lot more than that. So I would agree. It's not worth that. I go with the green. That's the 90 proof 6 year, $12.99, Heaven Hill old style, smooth and mellow, charcoal filtered bourbon at its finest.
Charcoal filter right before it's bottled, because if you charcoal filter it when it's in the barrel, it would be different.
That's an interesting point you made about the 7 year and the just the pure value of it, because as we were sitting here, I was having a lot of trouble determining which one I liked, and the 7 year had a characteristic of it that I did not like, which is the smoke, and they're charging 3 times as much. This flight has really opened my eyes as far as which one of the 3 that I would pick. I'm gonna have to say my best in show is the green label. I prefer its notes. It's a lot easier to drink. It's got a lot more flavor than the other 2. And I'm gonna say the worst in show, I'm going to say 7 year. Because of the smokiness. If I'm having that much trouble between the white label and the 7 year, and it's coming down to one taste note that I don't really like at all, then I'm going to have to choose the 7 year. That and the fact they're so close, the price difference is so high. So what do you think, Anthony, as far as your best and worst in show?
I'm definitely going to say that my best in show is going to be the green label as well, and my worst in show is actually going to be the white label 6 year. Even though I'm with you on the 7 year, I kind of get it. I almost feel like the 7 year is a balance of the two. It almost, to me, feels like on some sips too smoky, some sips more refined bourbon. But I know this isn't part of the segment of being best or worst in show, but at the end of the day, there's so many other things I would buy at $40.
Right.
Than 7 year. And it pains me to say that because we're doing a comparison here. I would go, best in show is going to be the green. The worst is going to be the 6 year white.
Well, I would make it a clean sweep on the best in show at the green for the 6 year green. I think that's the best. I would agree with Steven that the worst would be the 7 year bottled in bond. As I look here at Steven's collection sitting here, similar to what I asked him about his comparing the Evan Williams as a substitute for the 6 year bottled in bond, I'm looking at a 10-year-old single barrel McKenna, which is a bottled in bond. It's also a Heaven Hill for basically the same price, really probably cheaper. And available in Kentucky. That's
not only available, it comes out in allotments, but it's there most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get it. I'm not going to go through them so fast that I can't get another one, anytime. I can get those a lot more often than I can get to Florida to get this thing. No doubt. So, I would say the green label at 6 years old is pretty solid. It'd be interesting to see what they do with that now. I imagine they'll just take the 6 year off of it. That's probably all they'll do.
But again, outside of Kentucky, you mentioned a very important thing as we sort of close this up here is that the McKenna 10 year bottle and bond is available, and it's costing you less than $40, and it's a far superior whiskey to Maydays.
And with that, thanks for listening to this week's edition. Please like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Mashup KY. Also, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, keep it neat.